4-year deal that fills the center position. What does Ayton bring to this current Laker lineup?
Look, DeAndre Ayton was the #1 overall draft pick in the 2018 draft, a draft that obviously featured Luka Doncic going third and eventually getting traded to the Dallas Mavericks. And Ayton is a talented player. He was part of the 2021 Finals participants with the Phoenix Suns, was a big part of that team. But he's a guy with massive physical talent who has been inconsistent throughout his career. That's why he's been bought out this year by Portland, giving him a chance to get into the free agent market and going to the Los Angeles Lakers, who obviously, as you pointed out, Gary, desperately need a center. This is a big opportunity for DeAndre Ayton. If he has a good season there, he can reset his market, reset the perception of him around the league, and there really couldn't be a better situation for him. He's playing with Luka Doncic, an incredible passer, a guy who could set him up for lobs at the rim. He's had a ton of success with that. LeBron James, one of the greatest passers of all time. We'll see if Ayton can take advantage of it.
Inconsistent yet steady, Ayton the first player to average 10 points and 10 boards in his first 7 seasons.
Check 1. Only for the Knicks, it was check 1, check 2, check 3. You get the point, because the Knicks have their next head coach expected to hire Mike Brown, that according to ESPN's Sharpe. But it's been an exhaustive and exhausting search for New York, requesting and being denied permission for 5 current NBA head coaches, interviewing several available coaches, and going through multi-round stages with several candidates. Brown replacing Tom Thibodeau. Now, Mike Brown has been known to give teams a boost when taking over as a head coach. 05, took over a Cavs team, not made the playoffs since 1998, got him from 42 wins to 50, and a spot in the Eastern Conference semifinals. He won Coach of the Year that year with Cleveland in 09. Brown, second stint in the land, 2013 to 14, wine and gold, well, taking the team that won 24 games the year before, getting him up to 33 wins. He was then let go and replaced by David Blatt. And LeBron made his
That lasted
return
a long time.
soon after. 2022 to 23, Brown helping the Kings to an 18-win improvement, a win-improvement, nailed it, reached the playoffs for the first time since 05-06, snapping the longest drought in NBA history. Brown won coach.
Moving, he will be the next head coach of the Knicks, and he is certainly bringing with him a ton of head coaching experience, most recently with the Kings. Brown has a 454 and 304 record as a head coach with the Cavaliers, the Lakers, and most recently, again, the Kings. We welcome in our senior NBA writer, Tim Bontemps, into the program. Tim, great to see you. A lot of talk around this move by the Knicks. Give New York fans a reason to be hopeful by this hire.
Well, yeah, Gary, good to see you too. And yes, Mike Brown is now the Knicks head coach, and there is a lot of indifference, I would say, around this hire. It's a super exciting or sexy hire, right? Especially after the Knicks went out and tried to get a few sitting head coaches to take this job after firing Tom Thibodeau after making the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. But if you want an analog to Knicks history of Knicks fans alike, go back 30 years ago to 1995 when the Yankees, coming off losing in the playoffs, fired Buck Showalter, a very popular head coach, and Joe Torre was hired to be the manager of the Yankees. At that point, Joe Torre had never won a playoff game in his career. Like Mike Brown, was 55 years old. Like Mike Brown, had coached with 3 teams prior to coming to the Yankees. And then Joe Torre obviously went on to have an incredible run over the next 12 years with the Yankees making the playoffs every year, winning 4 world championships, bringing the Yankees back to the top of the sport after being on the sidelines for the championship picture for the prior 20 years before that. So for a Knicks fan base that is desperately waiting to snap what is a 52-year championship drought now, their hope would certainly be that Mike Brown could do what Joe Torre did back then.
Yeah, the parallels are certainly fair, but if we're talking about...
Ceiling is the roof.
We're always going to look at LeBron James through the lens of can he compete for a championship, because that's the standard that he established for himself. Not just with the way that he played, but what he said out of his mouth. Once upon a time, this is the guy that said, I'm chasing ghosts. Like, the guy that I'm pursuing is not even in the NBA. He retired 20 years ago. Like, that's what he said. He was chasing after Michael Jordan. That was the guy that he was trying to compete with. So everything that he does has been to try to catch up and try to eclipse Michael Jordan as the greatest player of all time. So, of course, the standard is the standard when it comes to any LeBron James-led team. We're going to view it through the lens of whether or not they compete and win a championship. And if they don't, it's a failed season.
Yeah, I don't think anything about that has ever changed. Now, I don't know that it's realistic to expect the Lakers to compete for a championship this upcoming season, but that doesn't move the goalposts in terms of how we're going to look at LeBron James, because he established that standard for himself. That's the level of greatness that we assign to LeBron just based on what we've seen from him over the last 24 years. So I guess when it comes to whether or not it's championship or bust for LeBron, I don't necessarily know that we move off of that.
Okay.
Because in your age 41 season, what else are you playing for if not to compete for a championship? But I guess the other part is just because it's unrealistic based on the roster that he has to work with to win a championship, it doesn't mean that we let him off the hook in terms of the standard by which we judge him and his greatness. Because listen, when you're in the conversation for being the greatest of all time, the standard does not change, right? If you are a top 5 player of all time, and I think a lot of people universally regard him as that, if you're a top 5 player of all time, then people are going to look at you as a player that can consistently put his team in the mix to compete for a championship. So that is going to be how we judge LeBron. I think it's interesting that when it became obvious that he wasn't going to catch Michael Jordan with ring count, that LeBron has started to rail against ring culture. It's interesting how self-serving that is, because a decade before that, this was the same guy that was talking about chasing ghosts, meaning chasing down Michael Jordan in terms of the total rings. When it became obvious that he wasn't going to get there, now all of a sudden there's a problem with ring culture. Again, we don't get to move the goalposts. The standard is the standard by which you judge all-time greats. And so it will always be championship or bust for LeBron James, even though I don't look at it as championship or bust for the Lakers' upcoming season.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when you were talking about that, I remember that Mind the Game podcast, CC. It's like you were in my head when he talked about that with J.J. Redick and also Steve Nash and whole ring culture and attaching rings to guys and trying to dilute their greatness. And I said, nobody's diluting your greatness when it comes to that. But when you're trying to move the goalposts now to try to soften the landing, people shouldn't buy that from LeBron James. You buy that from other people who maybe have one championship and may not get another championship. When you're acclaimed on that Mount Rushmore basketball players in the history of the great sport that's the NBA, the great sport that is basketball, you can try to move the goalposts all you want, but people are not going to buy what you're trying to sell, especially when you're the one that established that. LeBron James has been very, very calculated to make sure he goes to the best situation to win championships. And I'm not faulting him for that. He realized he couldn't do it in Cleveland the first time because no one was going to go to Cleveland to play with him to be a Robin to his Batman. So he's able to find a way to have the Monstars of the Galaxy and go to Miami to be with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, and that worked out. But when he sensed that that end of that road was coming up, that they couldn't be contending for championships, then his mind wandered back towards Cleveland, where they already had Kyrie Irving. They go get a Kevin Love. They bring in Ty Lue as a head coach, and the land that was for you winning a championship. When he realized that was exhausted, he decided to look elsewhere and go to Los Angeles Lakers, and they made it work for him. So I'm not going to blame LeBron James for doing everything he can to stack a squad or to be a part of a team or a squad to win a championship.